I'm Igor and this is the List Building Lifestyle, a podcast for those who want to build a large profitable email list and make six figures from anywhere in the world. If you would like to get rich by building a large email list while helping people, this podcast is for you. I also invite you to attend a free web class I'm conducting this week to find out how I built a list of 4,331,656 email subscribers at a profit. Secure your free seat at igor.cx. Attend this free workshop to discover an easy way to get 50 to 500 new email leads per day on complete autopilot without losing tons of money. Just go to igor.cx to attend this free web class. And now, once again, it's time to claim your list building lifestyle. Welcome back to another edition of the List Building Lifestyle with your host, Igor Kayfetz. Today, I am extremely excited because my next guest is just a diamond on top of a pile of jewelry of guests that I've had in the recent month. I mean, coming off of interviews with people like Dean Jackson, I am really excited about my next guest because in the recent month, as you know, I've been reporting on this, we've been playing with webinars. Now, I've been marketing online for over 10 years at this point, and we never incorporated webinars because I've just focused on paid traffic and scaled it through email marketing. But when we incorporated webinars into our system, we literally skyrocketed overnight, even when our webinars sucked. And for the first couple of months, they did suck very much, mostly because of me, because I refused to let go of some old notions that prevented me from improving them. But even when they sucked, we still ended up making more money. We ended up creating a brand new traffic source and scaling our business after a 2-year complacent patch. In other words, we couldn't grow for a couple of years. And then all of a sudden with the webinar, we increased our revenue by 30%. So that's why I'm excited to bring in my next guest, who's just a world-class expert at webinars. He's arguably better at this stuff than anyone else, at least from the people I've studied. I'm literally, I know it's going to sound outrageous, but I sincerely believe with every fiber in my body that my guest is better at webinars than some of the greatest internet marketers in history of our space, including people like Russell Brunson. Russell, no offense, we've hosted you on the show as well. So, I've tested pretty much every mainstream, if you can call it that way, webinar strategy out there. I've literally field tested it by running both warm and cold traffic to it. And I'm happy to report that none of them matched the results I've got with this particular strategy that I learned from my next guest. So without further ado, allow me to bring out and introduce to you my friend Jason Fladlien, the author of One Too Many, or pretty much the best darn book on webinar marketing there is right now on Amazon. So go on Amazon right now and look it up, One Too Many. And of course, the creator of world's most profitable webinar, I believe, if my numbers are correct. Jason actually created this is outrageous, guys, but this is true, a $100 million webinar. So if you ever heard of Amazing Selling System, it's, those guys made a big splash in the e-commerce space and in the Amazon education space. So Jason was actually the brains behind the webinar. He crafted the offer, he crafted the slides, he managed the whole campaign, and he pretty much built out this incredible framework that's since then been applied to just hundreds of different businesses and works just as well every single time. And so, Jason, thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure hosting you on the show.
Hey, Igor, I'm happy to be here.
Man, look, I know it's really... I really want to dive into the specifics of webinar marketing. I would really love to do that because, this is the stuff that excites me these days. And we also started a course on that, as I was sharing with you before we hopped on the call. But, I also recognize that most of our listeners right now probably don't have a webinar of their own, and they probably have a few ideas about what webinars are that may prevent them from creating one for themselves. And that would be a big mistake for them because webinars are really profitable. So I guess the first place I'd like to start at is for you to share with us why webinars? Why do they work so well? And how did you decide to get into this space?
Yeah, so if anybody's listening to this and you don't have a webinar right now, I envy you greatly. And I'll tell you why, because I have webinars and it's very hard for me to just take a monumental exponential leap in my income because I'm already using what I feel is the greatest thing to achieve that. Now, if you don't have that and then you add it to your business, oh my God, it's one of the easiest ways. So you heard Igor in the introduction say how he broke through a ceiling, increased by 30%, because he essentially added one extra element. There are very few things in business that allow you to do that. And the webinar is one of them. Now, I'll tell you why in a second that is the case. But I just really want to dispel this notion of if I don't have a webinar, then I'm at a disadvantage because I'm too new. I'm not qualified enough yet. I got to somehow pay the dues. I got to climb the ladder one rung at a time. And I'm here to tell you, you don't. You can just start at the top of the ladder, and that the webinar is a way to start there. And I'll tell you, the webinar shows your customers or potential customers what it could be like to be your customer in advance of having to be your customer. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, say, whatever you're selling. Now, I'm assuming, Igor, most people listening to this podcast, they sell information. Would that be a fair assumption?
Information products, maybe sometimes software. Some of them are agency marketers, catering to small businesses. But for the most part, it would be fair to assume information. Yeah.
Now, let's look at every single one of those industries. So information marketers are great because what are you selling? Information. So if you can provide information in advance and you show somebody my information makes you feel better than other people's information related to this topic, what do you suppose happens if somebody encounters a complete stranger and that stranger in 15 minutes can give them a piece of information that completely changes their whole outlook on a problem? Igor, what do you suppose happens when you can take a complete stranger and in 15, maybe 20 minutes, have them say, oh my God, what you just told me changes everything about how I'm dealing with this problem? What do you think happens?
Well, that's a loaded question. I mean, it happened to me with the book, right? So when I picked up a copy of your book after going through some failure with webinars and kind of researching every topic on it, well, then just flipping through a few pages, especially the part where you spoke about the introduction and then you broke down how the webinar needs to look like from a bird's eye view. That took me about 15 minutes to read, and that was a big aha moment. I remember the day, and I was in my bed. It was about 30 minutes past midnight. I was trying to figure out webinars, and that was a big light bulb moment. I dropped the book, I ran downstairs, and I had to start working on it because it just something, the energy changes, and there's I feel, my brain starts buzzing. It's so weird. From that point forward, to me, there was no other authority on the topic, just right. Jason Fladlien.
Now, that's a very interesting observation that you just made there, Igor, because if I had to read the minds of the listeners hearing this, they're going to think initially, like most people do, that, well, I don't possess that type of information to create those paradigm shifts or those aha moments because I'm not nearly the expert that an Igor or a Jason may be. But what you'll discover, at least the way I approach webinars, is it's less the content of the information and it's more how you contextualize it. So the reality is, at the end of the day, everything is essentially broken down to fundamentals. There are no really massive secrets that last forever and ever. Maybe tactical advantages that can give you some slight bumps here and there, right? But essentially, it's like you want to be happier, you sleep better, you eat cleaner, you exercise, you meditate, right? Yep. These are not groundbreaking new concepts. But how can you take somebody who knows they should eat better and get them to eat better within one interaction of you? It turns out it's not that important the kind of information you present. It's much more important in how it's presented. Now, 99% of the emphasis, focus, training, education out there about information and content is all put on the content itself. What are you going to say? And so little of it is what's surrounding that. So, for example, in the introduction section of my webinar framework, I talk about how, say you have a cup and the cup is filled with, let's call it piss, because this is a nice picture that you won't forget, right? And I'm trying to put tea into that cup. I can't do it no matter what. I could have the greatest tea in the world, but your cup is filled with piss. And so I try to pour tea into it and I'm screwed, right? You got to dump out the pee before you can put in the tea. That's the rhyme for you there. And so in our webinar introduction, before we can ever make any message land, we first have to remove the inbuilt biases that would prevent that message from breaking through in the first place. Mm-hmm. And hopefully I'm not getting a little too technical here, but the idea here is you can't let in good information until you first get rid of the bad information that's already in the brains of your prospects that are coming onto your webinar. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't realize that. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to put more liquid into a cup that's already filled. That is a huge mistake. What you end up doing, and this is why the big gurus, their disadvantage becomes your advantage, is they try to use their expertise to educate somebody who's already filled with education. And all you have to do is remove all that noise. And then what happens when you remove noise? You can whisper something and it will have a great impact. Where before you might be screaming at the top of your lungs, yet no one hears you, right? And that's the whole concept here. So if you're a beginner in information, how you present the information, your information may be exactly the same at the end of the day as the next guy's, right? Yeah. But how you'll present it is going to have such a greater impact. And if somebody says, wow, this is what it's like to consume information from him versus somebody else, and now I have the opportunity at the end of the webinar to give this guy or this gal more money, or give them some money, right? That's an easy sell to make. It has nothing to do with, forward close techniques and, scarcity and risk reversal. All those things are nice, right? But at the end of the day, you've shown in advance what it's really like to be your customer. And then you've given the opportunity to become your customer. Now they're convincing you that they should spend money with you as opposed to you trying to convince them. That's information. So you use information to sell information. Seems obvious, yet most people miss the obvious, right? And then you look at software. So I started the company Rapid Crush with Wilson Matos, my business partner, in 2011 on the whole premise of we're going to build a software company. Because I got tired of teaching information and not getting 100% success rate. I have expectations, Igor. I want every single person who spends money with me to make more money than they spend with me. Unfortunately, I'm only responsible for a certain percentage of that equation. There's also some responsibility on the user side, right? But I would love to, if possible, get as many people to be successful as I could. So I felt up into that point that the missing link was interfaces. If I could take the information and put it into an interface, then that would allow me to have more of an advantage in serving customers than my competition could. So software is automation at the end of the day. So if you're selling software, you're selling a way to automate an outcome, which is the same exact thing that you're teaching if you're teaching information, which is how to achieve a different outcome. And so a software is essentially the same exact sell. So if you show somebody, hey, listen, this is how you should achieve this, and then you give them a faster, easier, quicker, more effective way of doing that in the form of software, you just won. You just made the sell. But again, you're showing them what the future is like in the present. And then you're giving them a vehicle to get to that future as quickly as possible. That's an easy sell if you can accomplish that. Agencies are the same thing. The agency is, I would rather hire you to do it than do it myself. Well, in order for me to know the right way to do it, I have to be informed. How do I get informed? Through education, right? And so with an agency, if you can show them exactly the process and then give them the opportunity to do it by themselves, which nobody wants to do, or to pay you to do it for them, then that's an easy sell, right? Yep. And so the whole concept here is, I don't care who you are, beginner, expert, intermediate, right? The idea at the end of the day is you got to sell something that changes somebody's life positively. You got to sell something that whatever they exchange in money, they get far more in return in value. And the webinar, I have found, is more often than not the most effective vehicle to show somebody that exchange of money for value is going to come out in their favor.
Wow, there's so many things that I want to touch on. That's just way too many to cover. But you know what? Let's focus on this. So the webinar is truly the best way to kind of demonstrate value, show future results in the present. Okay. Now, what if we don't necessarily have any social proof? Because the first part of your process is, okay, within the introduction, let's really quickly establish our social proof. So, okay, let's just say we don't have social proof. What do we do?
Well, everybody has social proof, by the way. So it's very funny that people are just very unaware of the leverage that they already possess. So I'll give you an example, because by the way, every position has an advantage within it. And this is what I like about the webinar. So if I'm in a market where I have no testimonials, if I'm in a market where I'm brand new, right? How do we put that into an advantage for our audience? We say, listen, here's the deal. What I'm really offering you, this should be something that we should sell for $10,000 or $20,000 because how valuable it is. But because you're going to be my guinea pig, You're taking a chance on me. You're going to get $20,000 worth of value for just $1,000. And also you're going to get me working 10 times as hard for you as I would, or as you would if you went to somewhere else. Why?
Yep.
Because I have a reputation to make, because I want it more. And now you just took it a huge advantage from your positioning. Your leverage is the lack of social proof becomes one of your strongest selling objectives. Advertising done effectively is just really an articulation of the truth. It's kind of funny because we think that we have to run from the truth somehow to sell, which is silly, because all really good advertising is just the truth spoken eloquently. And that's what I did right there. Now, obviously, if you don't care about the customer, obviously, if you don't have $20,000 worth of value that you could sell for $1,000, then I hope that you never sell anything, because you shouldn't be. You should never be able to take a customer on that you can't serve. So I don't want anybody to be successful in that situation. But most of you, it's fairly easy. You already can have that. Or if you don't have it personally, you can find a product that does. So, we sold $25 million of somebody else's product. We weren't the product creator, but we were the one that could best articulate the value of that product and why it was the best solution for that audience. And that's how you win. So when somebody says to me like, hey, Jason, I don't have customers, I'm brand new. I say, great. That's a huge advantage, being brand new. People like an upstart. Most entrepreneurs love to take chances on the next big thing because they can see a part of themselves in that person, right? Every position has an advantage. What you need to realize is that you are the only disadvantage preventing the client from seeing that.
That's beautiful. I love how straightforward you are too. And you take the skeleton, you make the skeleton dance. It's in copywriting, that technique is called damaging admission, right? Taking whatever is wrong with your product and
you call that damaging, Igor, but I don't think there's anything damaging about it. There's no admission there. It's the truth spoken eloquently, right?
Yeah. So what I meant to say, and thank you for calling me out on that. Basically, you take the flaw and you turn it upside down into an advantage, into a reason
flaw?
why.
I don't see any flaw there.
That's how it is positioned initially, right?
There's no flaw there. It's fantastic that you have no social proof, because you're going to work extra hard to get your social proof, and they're going to be your social proof. So when they sign up, they're getting a deal with the explicit expectation that they're going to come out and sing your praises when you're done, because you're going to change their whole world, right? There's no flaw there.
Now listening to this, now I can truly appreciate this. But when I first got into the coaching space, I went on the Warrior Forum, which I'm sure you know what that is. And I sold my first coaching package for $300. I had no social proof. I had no proof whatsoever. I wasn't even making, proper money yet. But what I've done was I said, okay, here's who I am. Like, I know how to build lists, and here's a screenshot from my HeyRover account. And I'm looking to fund my wedding. And I really want to take my wife to Czech Republic to get married in a castle. And I said, well, I'm looking for a couple of coaching clients, and I'm doing a lifetime deal for $300 because A, I don't have social proof, B, I need the money by this date, and C, because look, I'm no guru, but I'll just work extra hard for you. And I've had 3 people sign up for that. Okay, all of them became successful. The first one was a screenwriter dude from UK. I don't know what he's doing now, but I took him to about $1,000 a month. The other was a lady from California. She ended up building a $20,000 a month business. And the third person was a guy from Australia. His name is Jason. And I took him to $8,000 per month within the first 90 days. And it was almost magical, because I wasn't making that kind of money when he signed up with me. But it was like, as soon as he signed up and these other people gave me money, it's almost like I received some kind of permission to be successful,
Everybody listening to this podcast right now wish they would have been there and had the opportunity to take advantage of you and that offer. Right. So who lost there, right? and I would put it to everybody listening is all of you could create an offer like that. And until you do, everybody else misses out. That's selfish.
Yo, it's Igor. If you're loving the content, hop on over to listbuildinglifestyleshow.com for more free training and a free transcript of this episode. Oh, and I'd really appreciate if you logged into iTunes and rated the show. It really helps. Thanks. That's beautiful. And I love also the concept of partnering up with someone else because, there's a difference between a product and an offer, right? So you said you took someone else's product and you sold it. But basically what you've done, you packaged it into a sexy offer. And this is what people don't understand. There's a fundamental difference between just having a product and building a sexy offer, sexy proposition delivered over a webinar.
Oh yeah, I mean, so the number one goal, and anybody can do this, which is really exciting because it's just creative problem solving, is how do we make $1 only cost a dime? I don't care how bad you are at selling. If you're selling dollars for dimes, it's not a very hard sell to make. So the reality is, like, what's your favorite sport? Do you like sports, Igor?
Yeah, I'm a soccer guy. So
I knew you were going to say soccer.
Yeah.
So imagine if you could have 2 goalies instead of 1 goalie.
Oh, that's nice. That would be awesome.
That would be awesome. And maybe it's a little complicated at first, but if you get to penalty shootouts, if you had 3 goalies, one can dive right, one could dive left, and one could stay in the middle, right?
Yeah.
It would change the whole nature of the game. You would have such an advantage. Now, you can't change those rules. That's cheating. But in business, rules are way more malleable, right? Malleable. Yep. So I can change the rules. So let's take an offer that doesn't have a money back guarantee. For whatever reason, the vendor is...
Let's take my offer. So I sell traffic. There's a hard cost involved. So we don't offer a money back guarantee.
Right. And there's many reasons why they may not. But as an affiliate, I can come in and offer for a money back guarantee. I can take that risk, right? Maybe there's a way. Now you say, well, Jason, but... that seems too risky. Well, maybe we make it conditional. Who cares, right? The whole purpose is, if I took your offer that doesn't have a money back guarantee, I was willing to concoct and think of a way to minimize my own risk, but still offer a money back guarantee to the client. And I promoted your offer. People would rather buy it from me than you, because I just made your offer better than you're making your own offer, right? Yep. And that is brilliant selling. So again, to people who are starting out, don't be the giant, stand on the shoulder of the giant, because oftentimes by the time I finally get a campaign off the ground, Igor, I'm exhausted. So I'm done. And that's where your starting point could be. You could look at everything I've done and I'll miss things. The gaps that I miss are the ones that you can fill in. And then clients would rather buy from you than from the source, from me, because you can add more to it than I did. The only difference is you have to get their attention. I might already command attention because of reputation or because I've built funnels and things that lead towards me. But if you're hungry and if you want it, you can go out there and get it. And so again, to me, anybody who says, well, I don't have a product, or I don't have this, or I don't have that, what I really hear, Igor, is they say, the amount of money I currently possess is enough. That's what they're saying to me, essentially, right? Because if you wanted to truly, absolutely change your income level, you wouldn't let these little nuisances get in your way. What you're saying is these nuisances are more burdensome to me than staying in the financial situation that I'm in. And I know that sounds harsh, right? But this is the brilliance of information. I'm not just educating you here right now. What I'm doing is the thing I do every time. I'm demonstrating in action what I'm talking about. And I teach people how to do this, obviously, in the webinar training. But what I am doing here is changing how you feel about the information that you're used to hearing or the things that you say. So I could come out here and explain things the way everybody else would explain them. Boring, right? Instead, I'm using what's called a challenging frame. I'm challenging every single listener here, and I'm doing it in such a way that you're going to respond back. You're probably pissed off, saying, damn it, I'm going to show Jason that I'm not okay with my financial situation. And you're going to show me, you're going to prove me wrong by making more money. Thank you, right? I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong to every listener on this call. But that is an example, Igor, of how you can present information in a way that has an impact as opposed to just educate.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I also love the fact that if you promote someone else's product, if you partner up with them and you package it for them, you can actually leverage their attention and marketplace credibility and marketplace reach by basically pimping their name. Right.
So let me break this one down for you, Igor. I don't think this has been done in the history of internet marketing. It's just for this one time. But we built this offer around somebody else's product, and it was so compelling that people, and this is a $3,500 product, right? People were rebuying the product because they had bought from another affiliate or straight from the vendor. Yep. And then they found out about our offer later. So they were willing to pay twice for the same product just to get the additional bonuses that we put into our offer. So we go to the vendor and we say, hey, listen, why don't you just promote our bonus package to all the people who don't own it yet, right? And we did a webinar. And that webinar, I don't want to speak out of turn, but it either did high 6 figures or low 7 figures. I wish I could remember the specific number. We literally went to the owner of the products list and got them to pitch our bonus package to their own list of clients. So your offer is actually one of the greatest ways to get leads. But even if somebody won't do that, because that requires common sense, and unfortunately that's not so common in business, right? Yep. It's like you can still leverage, as you're saying, because people would go to YouTube to search for information about that brand or that offer, and there we were on YouTube, right? So we were able to leverage other people's names to sell their products for them by taking what they've already had and said, what can we add to it to give us an advantage that nobody else can realize? So therefore, consumers who are being educated and interested in this opportunity, who do their research, are inevitably going to buy from us. Period. Right? Now, Igor, here's what's great about this. This is kind of sophisticated, right? But in most markets, nobody's using a webinar. I mean, if they are using a webinar, it's only in name. It's not really a webinar, right? So imagine going to a market where good webinars don't exist, or even average webinars, where only below average webinars or no webinars at all exist in these markets. And you're the only one that brings in a webinar. You win by default. You win by default, right?
Why does it seem so simple now, and why it took me so many years to grasp all this stuff?
Yeah, it's all mental, right? It's until you're ready to actually believe that you could make $1 million, you won't make it, period. But once you figure out that it's possible, then it seems like it's so obvious. You're like, why did it take me years, right? Because it only took you years. It takes most people a lifetime, and they still fell.
Yeah. And this
so
is
thank God it only took you years. I mean, this stuff takes iterations, right? So when I was doing webinars, Igor, and this is why I love this business, because all of us have to pay somebody to accelerate our own successes.
Yep.
And that's a great thing. And the better you understand that, the easier it is to sell. That's why I can sell, and I love to sell. In fact, I don't have a fear of selling. I have a fear of not selling, right? Because I was insane enough back in 2007 to not be able to reference, buy, or follow any guides on how to do webinars. I literally had a blank page and said, let's make it up, right? If you could somehow find some of my first webinars, I hope nobody ever could, because I would be embarrassed. They were so cringy. They were so bad. They were so silly. We tried everything throughout the years. And by we, I mean like me. I say we now, but back then I was just like, okay, I wonder if this will work. I hope that didn't work. I wonder if this will work. Oh my God, that was really a train wreck, So I had to be the pioneer that came home full of arrows, and I was insane enough to do that. That's not normal, healthy behavior. But you can benefit from my unhealthy behavior. Now, obviously, along the way of making 1,000 mistakes, I picked up 1 or 2 things that actually worked. And people can pay me money to get those 1 or 2 things per 1,000 of failures instead of having to make their own 1,000 failures. So I think that's just a wonderful situation there. But the reality is, most of us can't take those big steps. We have to chew around the edges. And so the beautiful thing is, you can start with a simple webinar. And here's why I think webinars, Igor, are the thing. Webinars allow you to win no matter what. Here's what I mean by that. The fundamental premise of the way I teach webinars, and this I know resonated really well with you, Igor, is that we always provide value in advance. So the worst thing that'll ever happen when I create a webinar is a customer will walk away happy they spent time on that webinar. I might not make the sale, but I've created a net positive in the marketplace. I've created a net positive in the world, right? I have made somebody better after their interaction with me than they were before they started. Now, compare that to your traditional advertisement. Like, you take a normal sales letter, and a normal sales letter says, here's all this pain you're experiencing. Now, let me get some salt and rub it in your wounds to really heighten that pain. And now the only way you're going to experience relief from that pain is to buy my product, right? So that's a win-lose frame. You and the customer win only if they buy your product. But if they don't buy your product, you've just given them more reasons to be miserable with their current condition, right?
Yep.
There's no value in advance of the sell there. Not really. In most things, so then you take like a product launch formula. So Jeff Walker's a good friend of mine, and I love the product launch formula because that's value in advance. The only issue I have with that is that's 10 to 21 days of value in advance of the sale. I'm pretty impatient. I like to give you value for 75 minutes and then make a $2,000 sale as opposed to spending 21 days. Now, that's because I believe that's possible. Many people believe still to this very day that I can't take a complete stranger and have them exchange $2,000 with me to buy a bunch of ones and zeros that we transfer through cyberspace, right? They think I have to build rapport over 10 to 21 days, that I have to do all of these things. No. The idea is if I can completely change something for you within 60 minutes, done. I will get the sell. I will get enough sales to make that totally one of the most profitable things you can do. So when you create a webinar, one of the reasons it should be easy for you to adapt and do it is because you know the outcome. The outcome is I will make my market better. I will help whoever comes in contact with this. But I have done so in a way that also increases the probability that I will also make the sell. So not only am I creating something that's a good thing in general, but it's also the most effective way I can imagine to make the sell at the same time, right? Isn't that crazy?
It's truly like you can't lose with a webinar. You can't. The only way you lose is not having one.
Because they look at the webinar, Igor, and these are some of the things that they say to themselves. They say, well, that's going to take too long to create that, right? That's going to take a lot of effort. I don't know where to begin. What if I try to sell and somebody complains and calls me, an asshole because I was hard selling them? What if I create, here's my favorite one. What if I create a webinar and I can't get anybody to watch it, or I don't know how to get people on the webinar. So until I figure out how to get people on the webinar, then I'm not going to create the webinar, right? Yeah. These are how you lose. You lose because you don't even allow yourself to get the opportunity to win. And that is a tragedy of the greatest proportions, because the reality is, so clients say to me, Igor, I don't know how to get people on my webinar. And I say, great. Let's solve one problem at a time. Before you can put people on a webinar, you have to have a webinar, don't you? Yeah. So let's worry about that other problem another day. Let's just get the webinar done. Now I say to them, once you have an asset that can make you money and you do nothing with it, how much is that going to hurt? And they're like, yeah, that's going to hurt. Right now, you don't have that. There's no pain of not using your webinar because your webinar doesn't exist. So I say the mere act of creating the webinar will actually make you going out and getting traffic much more likely to happen, make it much easier to happen. But because you want to solve all problems before you solve any problems, you end up solving no problems. So let's just get the webinar. And then somebody else says to me, well, Jason, I don't know how to get people on a webinar. I say, well, do you think you could get 30 people on a webinar in the next month? That's an average of one a day. I don't know. 30, that's a lot. I know I'm asking for a lot here. There are 7 billion people on this earth? I'm only asking for 30 of them in the next 30 days, right? I think I could do 30, right? I said, you could probably stand out on a street corner with a QR code and get 30 on your webinar, right? Now, what if only 4 of those people buy a product, and that's a product that you make $2,000 a sell on? Doesn't have to be your product. It could be somebody else's product. Doesn't matter, right? Let's just say you make $2,000 a sell. In 30 days, you've just made $8,000. You know how few people in this world ever make $8,000 in a single month in their business or in their job? Almost nobody. And that's about the worst case scenario. But you can't do that if you don't have the webinar. And you know what the worst webinar is that you'll ever create? Your first one. You know what will suck a little less? It's just second one. Yeah, and eventually by the third or fourth or fifth webinar, everybody will be claiming you an expert, thinking you're some sort of genius. When the reality is you were only a couple steps away from the beginning. Most people won't start. So of course they shouldn't win.
Wow, this is amazing. This is just crazy. And this is so true as well. For me, a webinar literally enabled us to use 2 brand new traffic sources we simply couldn't access because we didn't have a webinar. It was amazing. And man, I wish I could pick your brain forever, but I know you're very busy. So instead, what I want to do is I want to urge everybody to literally, if you're listening to this in your car, then pull over. If you're in the gym, then step aside from the workout gear. Go on Amazon right now and get a copy of One Too Many. Okay, it's a book called One Too Many, and it's basically the entire manual on how to get a webinar going from scratch, minus the traffic stuff. Okay, Jason doesn't cover any traffic stuff, but you know where to get traffic. You just come talk to me. So go and get that book, One Too Many, and in that book, you're going to discover the 4-step outline and framework the way Jason builds everyone's webinars. So right now, Jason has this high-end service where he's working with Fortune 500 companies, and he's building the webinars. So the exact same process. You apply it to your business, you apply it to your product, you apply it to someone else's product, and you will see amazing transformation occur in your life. Now, the other thing you're gonna get once you get the book is you're gonna get the recordings of 2 of his most profitable webinars, as well as the slide deck for each of these webinars for free. Plus, in that book, again, I'm not sure why he did that. It's only $20, but in the book, Jason also gives you the all the closes that he uses on the webinar. So like if you don't know what to say to actually get people to commit to a sale, so he gives you that. In the same book, he's giving you the magic transition. So Jason explains how to pre-frame the sale and get the customer to tell you, okay, tell me what you got. And this is exactly what happened to me last night. We've done a webinar, and before I even got to a page, before I even had a product, right, I had people type it in the chat, okay, I'm convinced, I want to go. Where do I go and what are you selling? Tell me where and how much. Like, people are just dying to buy. So go on Amazon right now. Get a copy of One Too Many. Get it on Kindle, get it physical. I don't care how you get it. Just get it, read it, and implement it, because the only way you lose is if you don't have a webinar. So, Jason, thank you so much for breaking it down for us. It's definitely been one of the greatest episodes I've ever recorded so far. Truly goes on the sidebar on the site with all the greats. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Any last piece of advice I want to share with the list builders before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, if you're building a list, oh my God, a list and a webinar together, that's how I build a $15 million a year company in less than 5 years from scratch.
That says it all, pretty much, okay? So list and a webinar, that's all you need to be successful online. Cool. Jason, thank you again. Thank you so much. The list builders, thanks for your time today. And until next time we chat, have a good one. Thank you for tuning in to the List Building Lifestyle. Get access to previous episodes, the transcript of today's show, and exclusive content at our website at listbuildinglifestyleshow.com. Also, don't forget to claim your free seat at the traffic workshop I'm conducting this week, where I'm showing how I built a list of 4,331,656 email subscribers without losing money, and how my clients are putting anywhere from 50 to 500 new leads per day on their list at a profit without any list building experience. Just go to igor.cx to claim your free seat now.